Hello, everybody. This is Leslie Kristen over at Studio Cara, and this is my pro industry interview, and I want to introduce you to someone amazing. And I have next to me actually a new friend.
Yes.
We're fairly new, yes, but somebody that I'm just thrilled to kind of share with my people, my clients, all about you, because I think you're very unique. And the times that I've been listening to you, it's been very cool. So I want to share this with you, and I want to give her a proper introduction. So this is Brooke, Dr. Brooke Stuart. I know she looks like she's 19 years old.
I'm old. But 19.
At heart, right?
I'm 30.
Yeah. So I want to share with you a little bit of information. First off, so Dr. Brooke Stuart is a holistic doctor in private practice, as well as the founder and creator of Let Go and Grow, where our mission is to provide the most direct and approachable way to experience growth in the world. Over the past 10 years, Dr. Stuart has worked with thousands of people through her online platform, speaking engagements, which you're an amazing speaker, by the way, works with teams and organizations and one-on-one in practice, holding degrees in medical anthropology, psychology, and integrative medicine. To personalize and tailor treatments for her patients, particularly for women and professional athletes. You're located here in Central Florida, but you work with clients all over the world. And as a physician, she is deeply committed to her patients' personal growth and development as she uses solution-oriented methods to clear issues, create health, and assist them in realizing and actualizing their true potential, which is pretty much most people I know. To read more about Dr. Stuart and her journey into holistic medicine, you can check out her website. You can go to, we've tagged her here on this Facebook Live as well, so we'll give you more info about her. But with that said, thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
I love to have her in person. This is so cool because a lot of times it's just a split screen and, you know, whomever. We've had people all over the world, so it's been really fun. And I'm all for, you know, trying to do things more holistically. And also, you know, beauty is a huge conversation, I would say, that goes so much deeper than what we see on Instagram and YouTubes and tutorials and, you know, our little vanity world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
And it's so nice. I mean, my office is literally right across the street. It's like half a mile away.
Isn't that funny?
Perfect.
Wow. Yes.
And beauty, I mean, beauty is such an interesting field for me too. I love it just on a fun level, but it's also, what I love about it is that it's dynamic, just like a lot of things with health and wellness, about how, you know, you can place makeup on and you can feel that sense of confidence, but equally you can do things from within to have that be an internal experience that reflects out. So it's really dynamic. And that's one of the things I think a lot about in my practice is how can we do both and be inclusive and give people experiences both ways, because I think it's important to have both inner and outer experiences.
Yes.
And recognize that it all really is it's all really impactful of your experience. It's just a matter of how you perceive it, how you interact with it, how you interpret it, and how you work with it. Mm-hmm. For example, like with beauty, you know, you can either wear makeup because you feel insecure and you want to cover up and have this mask, or you can use it as an expression of yourself. And which is what I love that you talk so much about, is how can you allow this to reflect like your inner beauty. And the thing is so many times there are issues just naturally, like, yes, I have this blemish, I want to cover it up. And that's okay, especially if we could note that and acknowledge it and decide, how do we want to work through this and how can we address this? And I think that that's where my work comes most into play, especially with women. They are so aware of kind of like what's going on inside of themselves, whether it's an actual outbreak, a skin issue, acne, whether they can't sleep, whether they have pain or anxiety, which I know we're going to talk a lot about.
Yeah.
Or it's an actual self-confidence issue, insecurity, just internal. They're so aware, but it's like, how do you actually directly move through these issues? Because for so long, it's like, if you're so aware, it feels so much like a curse. But once you have a process and a way to facilitate it through and out, that outer world can just be magnified and optimized, because you know that your awareness is your greatest gift versus like a curse that you're just beholden to for the rest of your life.
I love that. Awareness is your greatest gift.
It is.
I wanted to share a little bit, because that just kind of, that struck. I see, so a lot of women that I work with, we have young girls that, are going to prom. Of course, now with Instagram, social media, all that, some of them spend thousands of hours just watching makeup tutorials. So they're very savvy with that. But I think that a lot of us, beauty changes. So that's something that as we get older, beauty kind of becomes a bit of a different conversation as well. And I think that maybe I get to be the artist that can give you awareness of what you don't see that is beautiful about yourself. Like some people, like you're saying, I think a big thing is finding, your style. And some people know, what their style is. You've got the girls that won't go to the mailbox without makeup on. And then you have some others like me that could care less. But there are a lot of factors also that I see that can be, sources of pain sometimes, that maybe some people just kind of like, oh, well, I'm just too old. It doesn't really matter. Well, it matters. It matters a lot, and you're not doing it for anybody else but yourself. And I think then you also have the other side, that you've maybe just kind of become complacent and are afraid to explore your beauty and own it.
Oh, yes.
So
absolutely.
There are those, it's kind of a give and take as we explore. And I've seen this with, quite a few different people. Or a client came in. It's interesting because we weren't really, Brooke and I were talking a little bit about what we were going to talk about today. And today, so I've had a client that came in. One of them came in, and she is a breast cancer survivor. For the past year, I hadn't seen her in a year. And she said, well, just to let you know what's going on. And she started to share with me, like, there are so many people, women that go through breast cancer more and more and more. Then my next client that comes in, we started talking about, yoga, because she goes to the Kundalini Yoga Center. I was just there yesterday, and we just started chatting. And, she's lived with a lot of anxiety. And then the other client comes in. She's a mental health counselor. She said, number one is depression and anxiety that she's treating. So it's like, wow, there's this common thread of things that I necessarily have been fortunate enough, I can work through them. I don't stay there, but a lot of people do stay there. And I really think that in the world of beauty, so to speak, of a lot of it is about, when you feel beautiful and you can own it, and it doesn't have to be beautiful by the standard of a Sofia Vergara or, a whomever, Taylor Swift or whatever. It's just whatever it means to you, and you can own it. And like you're saying, having that power and that awareness. So share with me, where does anxiety come from?
100%. I have some notes even on what you said, because I think it's so applicable, and it's such an interesting conversation to see where this is going to go. But, somebody once told me that beautiful means full of being. And I really think it has a lot to do with being you, right? And if whether you're struggling with anxiety or depression, or you just went through, a mastectomy and you have had chemo and radiation, I think one of the kind of like mismatches that creates a lot of tension in our own skin is that we just don't feel like we've come home to ourselves. We just don't feel like ourselves.
Ooh, come home to ourselves.
And I can see that in a lot of my patients where there's just this like slight irritation of just like tension in their bodies and their systems.
Mm-hmm.
And it always, to me, becomes my job of how can I help this person just be who they are and live the life they're here to live and experience the power they're meant to have and just express themselves as they are. Because like you, which is, I heard you say this loud and clear as you were just talking to me, you see people for who they truly are, for how they can show up in the world, for what's already there, but just needs a little assistance and dust shaking off and a little bit of deconstruction and unlayering. And that's the same way I see my patients. They walk in, they may have, 10 symptoms or 10, issues coming up, but I see them as capable and beautiful and who they are versus like a disease label or versus anxiety or versus, the bad choice they made 10 years ago.
No judgment. That's the whole thing. Like I get to see you as a brand new canvas.
Yes.
And, because makeup is a big routine a lot of times. Like, well, I've been doing this since high school. How old are you now? Oh, 65. Well, it's been a few years.
Yeah.
So it is fun because I'm not sitting there judging that you're prettier than me or they're younger than me or, or, oh my gosh, so you screwed who over 20 years ago? And that's showing up in your face, but that's how we see ourselves.
Exactly. And it's funny too. You mentioned like anxiety with beauty, and I think so many people, especially when they get caught up in the material world or in vanity or all things exterior, they have this idea that they want to preserve like how they look now, right? And I think the funny, like this, and that word preserve kind of like freaks me out. It sounds like you're in the grave already.
Botox is kind of preserving the non-movement in your face. So it has become a massive trend.
No, and I, no judgment there whatsoever. But I think there's something different than like preservation. And I think it has to do with the word beauty of being like, and I think like Botox or, anything cosmetic, makeup, any of these things, I don't even see them as like, obviously we could use, it's about the meaning of the word preserve, but I feel like it's more just about like a choice. Like you're choosing to do that. Like you're being creative with your look. The intention and the energy behind it is totally up to you. For example, if I have a patient come in and they want to lose weight, they can either do it because they want to hate their body the whole time, like drive it into submission, control the whole process. They hate how they look in the mirror, and so they want to punish themselves. Or we can begin to shift that into something sustainable and expansive and like, hey, look, I want to nourish myself. I want to get to know my body in a different way, connect, understand the language of my symptoms, and explore and expand and kind of like that love-based energy for myself. And even if there are fears or insecurities or like a need to control or judge myself, okay, we can work through this because we can create an environment in which even those patterns land on more of a loving-based, objective, observational space that is work withable, and we can learn from it in such a different way versus like that fear-based kind of like dogmatic, rigid, forced mentality. You know what I mean? So it's so much about like, we can make the same exact choice, but the energy behind it can be so different. You know what I mean?
And that it's interesting because that was a conversation that this client, she was a fairly new client, and you could tell there was a lot of oppression that she had been dealing with in the marriage. And, you get to one day where you just go, you know what? That's not going to work for me anymore.
Yeah. Yes.
So and when you decide to choose that, it gives you, again, like this whole new oh my gosh, what was the word that you said? You know, it's just like giving yourself that freedom.
100%.
Mhm.
And two, it's like sometimes you just realize these things and you're able to finally let it go because you've learned the lessons. And that's a lot of what I talk about in my practice is like, how can we engage in health as a journey, and how can we begin to look at what's coming up, connect to it, and learn from it so it becomes a bridge to that other side. So as we're letting go of it, it also lets go of us. And for example, something like oppression or suppression and kind of like repressed experiences in the subconscious, it can lead to like very tangible and real health issues. And there's a ton of science on this, but it's interesting just to see. And it's because the mind and body are so one.
Right.
And that can lead, and the way I see it is that it comes out and it can be expressed through our vulnerabilities. So it can be expressed through, like if you have a tendency towards anxiety or future thinking, or if you have more of a tendency towards depression and going into if I coulda, shoulda, woulda, the past.
Is that future thinking?
I would say anxiety is more like when people are feeling anxiety, of course there's a physiological layer to it. Like it could be a hormonal imbalance, thyroid issue. It could be a food intolerance. It could be something like, you're just making a lifestyle choice that doesn't match with biology and evolution. Like you're going to sleep too late, or sleeping with the television on, and now you don't have time to.
Oh my gosh, that was one of the things that she said. She goes, my husband falls asleep with the TV on. And also, another thing was that you get to the point, I think some people, a lot of us do, we get to the point where it's affected our health. In this case, there was some fibromyalgia, there were some other things involved. So you get to the point where you're starting to go, I've got to take a look at this because I'm feeling so bad. And there are those outside factors.
100%. Like think about it, right? Like a third of your life, you're sleeping, right? So if that is not like sacred space, I don't know really what is, because that's a time where you're literally can be sleeping, resting, processing the day. Of course, it's the time where we're detoxing the most, regenerating. So if that time is off at all, if we're not really able to engage in a really deep sleep, that becomes absolute priority in my practice to repair and to heal, because a lot of times people will think the cure for energy is like 2 more shots of espresso in the morning, right? Which, symptomatic relief for sure. I like blonde espresso at Starbucks. But I actually love the Maitland Starbucks. They are so cool there. They always write my name on cups and like say I love you with hearts.
Oh my God.
I really love them.
There's a shout out to Maitland Starbucks.
Nina. They're so cool actually.
Good.
But they really are. But for example, that's never going to solve the problem. So if you have issues with energy production and focusing in a clear, mental acuity, and having, if you have issues with anxiety or depression or skin issues, we always want to look at these basics first, right? Like let's look at the stress response, let's look at energy production, let's look at diet, lifestyle, let's look at how you're sleeping, how you're detoxifying, meaning digestion and elimination, and also the other systems of your body. Let's really take a look at this, because sleep is about more than just like sleep, right? It's about recovering, processing through the day, being able to wake up with an energy that's your own. And in this, if we're able to kind of clear the slate by looking at these fundamental basics, it's like we can really see what's actually going on. Because so many times I'll work with people with this laundry list of symptoms that don't have any luck in really moving forward. They're caught up in these recirculated patterns. They're scared of regression because they don't have these core pillars in place. So if we can put these core pillars in place, it's like now they have confidence in themselves and their minds and bodies to heal. And what we've done is we've shifted them into a healing mode. And like I've talked about, in certain groups and whatnot, it's like maybe you're at 48%, right? So the car is in reverse. You're not healing. You're actually moving towards the disease end of the spectrum. But if health is a spectrum, maybe all we need to do is click you into 51%, but that's a forward motion. Now you're healing, now you're regenerating. And so that's what I often see is if we can just create that slight shift in momentum, which we can typically do in the space of even the first session by just bringing a little bit of energy back into the system through shifting perspective, which in my personal opinion is 24/7 medicine. It's how we relate to the world. We're rewiring the stress response in that way. If we can, or if we can repair sleep or do, a certain number of things, now the car is beginning to accelerate and it's going from 51%, momentum 75, 82, and we have a lot more encouragement and motivation to keep going and to keep healing because we have results. It's boring.
Yeah, you traded it up for a Porsche.
Yeah, exactly. You're upgrading. And it's so boring. Like, who wants to be a part of a process where things aren't working? But especially in the health field, we are so used to things not working, to feeling broken, like something's wrong with us. And maybe and I tell actually on the first visit to every patient, I always say look, nothing's wrong with you. You're not broken. There are just patterns, right? There are these patterns that we want to look at, we want to learn from, and we want to begin to engage in a growth-oriented way. And if we can understand that you are not these patterns, then we have more space to interact with them in a more productive way to move forward,
Mm-hmm. And oh my gosh, you just mentioned something there about, I think, and especially I'm going to say in our country, in the United States, and the reason why I say that is because I grew up in Spain. Mm-hmm. So, having lived in Europe, there's just a very different lifestyle. Mm-hmm. Now, granted, it's been quite a few years and things change, mm-hmm. but we're so wanting that quick fix, all the time. I'm fat, suck it out of my body. Yeah. I'm this, I need this, and it's like 500 donuts didn't fly into our mouth and we didn't gain weight that fast, and I think that being able for us to figure out how to be kinder mm-hmm. and not, I know that I didn't put on 15 pounds overnight mm-hmm. and it's going to take mm-hmm. some time, and it's not nearly as fun trying to take them off as it is putting them on, that's for sure.
And what's wild about that? I love where this is going, because what's wild about that too, it's almost like the biggest perspective shift is opting into the journey and the process versus the quick fix dopamine hit. Ooh, but in this society, we're obsessed with quick fixes because we're scared of maybe the permanent nature of state we're experiencing right now. We're addicted to dopamine hits, whether it's through dating apps, social media, validation, whether it's through that candy bar. We're so used to kind of checking out mm-hmm. through that dopamine hit that it makes it hard to have command over our choices. So a lot of times in my work with patients, all I want to do is clear that up so they have actual command over their choices.
Being present,
being connected, engaging in the journey, but also applying language that's conducive to the journey. And what I find is when we can begin to navigate those transitions, learn, become curious about our challenges and kind of really just connected to the journey and to what's real, versus start, stop, arrival points, destinations. If we can just make it about the journey and really expanding and enjoying it, results actually can come so quickly, but it's releasing the resistance around dropping into the depth of your power of choice to move forward. It's just so different. People don't necessarily trust it, So it's almost
sure.
It's almost learning how to interact with something that's real,
Well, and you have to make a commitment to yourself, and you've let yourself down maybe so many times, and you're wondering am I even trustworthy?
Yeah.
Do I really want this? That's the other thing. Obviously we've gained pleasure out of doing things that have gotten us to where we go until maybe it's I fear that I can never walk again. Yeah. So I have to do something now.
Yes.
And you never want to get to that point.
Yeah. And that's actually what you just said, just so insightful, because it is doubt that like lack of faith in yourself in the process, it's like a confidence crusher, but it's also, it's like we take ourselves out of it before we even have a chance to begin. So we self-sabotage because maybe there isn't that belief that we can do it. But I find that there are a number of ways to move through doubt. And one is just to kind of like stay in that conversation and to begin and to kind of like keep tweaking until you feel like you have a process that really works. But also just like beginning to even start with like, people are so scared to start with the simplest of things. But just like that 1-2%, those simplest of things can literally shift you into this mode to make other changes easier. So I find that if you're just able to connect and stay in the conversation, the other side is inevitable. And I used to be a little bit wary of saying this, but now I just say it with confidence because I just, until I see it, I haven't seen it. I have never seen someone with a growth orientation who has this uncompromised vision within them being like pulled into, you know, something new, something different. I've never seen someone with that intention and the commitment to it through what they can do, showing up, becoming present, connecting to the challenges, being receptive to learning from the process. I've never seen them regress. I've never seen them get anything but better. And I used to not say that because, I mean, of course, there's always that window of possibility. Who knows? But I just almost don't even believe in it. And I think that's something I like to share.
That's amazing. So it does not exist for you in the sense like you bring that forth into your work.
Yeah. I literally do not believe that regression is a thing when you've decided to see, if you can see every challenge as for you and begin to appreciate it and connect with it, how could you not improve? You're so connected and plugged in to what most people divide themselves from because they see it as a threat. So if you're able to find meaning,
or as an embarrassment,
yes,
you know, like
exactly,
shame.
Yep. And that's one of the things too, that I feel so fortunate to be able to learn about and observe with my patients. It's that like everybody is human. Everybody has that thing. And if you can find, just like on a practical note, you know, obviously you can work with a professional that's trusted and you can confide in that where it can land with an objective observational perspective. But even if you have a friend or a church community or a yoga community or whatever it are your people that are trusted, if you can just kind of like acknowledge, embrace, and begin to kind of like express and release that into a space where you have people around you that have your back, that see you for who you are, that is liberating and healing in and of itself. And furthermore, if you can become that person for yourself to where you can allow things that you've, you know, held on to in terms of guilt, shame, resentment, all of these deep-seated fears, and begin to just express them and say them out loud and be there for yourself on your own team, able to like learn from them versus judging yourself as that being who you are. I know, you know, in talks, I talk a lot about like, you're not your divorce. You're not your worst day. You're not that terrible choice you made, that terrible thought you had. But we're so inundated with these ideas of like, you are what you eat, you are what you think, you are your choices. I've seen you are your worst day on an Instagram quote. Like, you're not, I promise, you are not your worst day. That would be awful. But who you are is the creator of your reality simply because you have the power to choose choices, at least in the terms of the healing sense. And so if you are that, then we're able to choose how we respond, how we perceive, how we interact with, interpret these events, and we can work with them so that they can clear and so that even more space is created to have that sense of peace and safety and to fully express who we are more and more and more and lean into that. And the less we judge ourselves, like one of the things that I did last year that was really helpful in terms of putting myself out into the world, and because I used to have immense amounts of anxiety when it came to public speaking, working with people, talking to people, especially in public settings.
Wow.
And like,
you would never think that.
I'm so much more comfortable now. But last year, my New Year's resolution, it was unconditional gratitude. So just being like grateful for all things, whether it was pain, it was almost like weirdly, I trained myself to be like, I get to feel this. I get to go through this challenge. But not only that, I decided I didn't come into this world to judge myself. You know what I mean? Like I came in here to learn, to grow, to be of service and to connect with people and to like come in that way. And I think if we can give ourselves the gift to be like, I didn't come in this life to judge myself. It doesn't mean I won't at times, but it can land differently.
Yeah.
And we all know like there's people that we would go to that would attack us, right? And would judge us and would like tear us down for a bad choice.
Mm-hmm.
And that's who we don't want to be for ourselves. But we also know that friend who was like, you know what? Come as you are. I love you. You could like do this and I'd have your back.
Yeah.
And it's because they know that is not who you are. And they can be that mirror for you, but you can also be it for yourself, you know, while cultivating a community that has your back in that way at the same time, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not going to go into the conversation, but you may want to write this down. I don't know if it would be a whole other conversation on the effect of social media with that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I have a lot to say on the social media.
That's why I'm saying we're not going to talk about that, because that is a whole other one. And I want to have another time with you, because that is fascinating to me, having not been born in that era. So, oh my goodness. So tell me what the viewers could do. So if you're watching this on the replay, you just kind of logged in. I'm Leslie Kristen, owner of Studio Car and Car Cosmetics, and this is Dr. Brooke Stuart, and she's a holistic doctor. And so talking about anxiety, what are some of the things that people could do today, like now, that could help them maybe even become aware of it, like you were saying?
Yeah.
And so
absolutely.
Sure, yeah.
So much of what we want to do when it comes to working with anxiety is send the body and the mind and your system as a whole this signal of safety. Like, look, I've got you. We're on the same team. Because anxiety at the end of the day is really your body's way of trying to rise to the challenge. So a lot of times we feel intense anxiety in really stressful situations that actually may be meaningful to us, whether it's getting, married, or whether it is, the birth of a child, or a really cool, work event that you're excited about. So a lot of times this is when we feel the most anxiety. So there's that sort of anxiety that we can begin to even just shift our perspective of, which creates the sense that it's okay. Like, my system has my back and I'm not going to ignore it. I'm going to connect with it, but I'm also not going to get caught up in it. I'm just going to be aware of it, and I'm going to focus on being in the present moment. So there's that aspect of like when it's happening, to be able to kind of connect with it in that way. But then there's the kind of like exploration and the more long-term approach of how we can begin to work with anxiety, so that it happens less and less and less, and that we can use it more and more to our benefit. So in a short-term thing, there are, of course, like supplements that can calm the system. And there's one that I really like. It really depends, like the root cause of what's going on. So if people have questions on the supplements, ask me later and I'll give you some suggestions. But it really does depend on like what the root cause is. So if somebody's not sleeping and they're having anxiety throughout the day because of a lack of energy, okay, let's work on sleep. If it's a detox issue, we work on detox. So that can drastically improve anxiety right away. But the other pieces are just sending yourself a signal of safety. And for example, and we may go over this in another time.
Yes, we're going to have a little workshop.
That would be awesome. But there's this thing I kind of teach that's called the heart-based practice. And literally placing your hands over your heart is actually a way to begin to actually rewire your nervous system. And even just for 3 minutes a day, it's basically saying like, okay, I see this anxiety. I connect to it, but I'm going to connect to myself and send myself this signal of safety to become present, to feel my heartbeat. And actually, just by placing your hands on your heart, you're promoting this connection that releases a whole cascade of neurochemicals that actually shifts your body from a fight, flight, freeze, the list goes on, appease. There's all of these different words that go with the sympathetic nervous system response now, but we can actually shift it into more of a calm, connected, healing parasympathetic mode just by placing our hands over our hearts. And this is something that's extraordinarily self-regulating. And I've seen this help people through severe panic attacks, through all kinds of things where they maybe don't have medication available or something symptomatic that can help them to work through it. So in short term, that would be an approach. In terms of long term, I think there's a lot of value in kind of clearing the issues that maybe are expressed as anxiety. So if there's something that you're not interested in dealing with in the present moment that you find it hard to connect with, I think working with a professional or with people that you trust in a community setting, and beginning to identify and work through those mentally and emotionally can be really helpful, whether it's buried feelings, whether it's childhood trauma, whether it's a current life stressor that you need assistance connecting with, that can be a helpful route. Also, dietary things, like I've seen people do things like remove gluten and dairy out of their diet, and all of a sudden anxiety goes away if that's a trigger for them in their systems. I've also seen things like people heal thyroid issues, or maybe have issues with detox or hormonal imbalances, and maybe vitamin deficiencies. So these are other things that we can explore in terms of really clearing up anxiety as a whole, so it doesn't have to continue to kind of like get our attention in that really uncomfortable way when it's fully expressed and we feel like we're outside of ourselves and unable to kind of work with the mental and emotional and often physiological roots of anxiety,
Yeah. So there's a whole cascade of, or all these different things that we actually need to look into, besides, and I guess that, that you're just pop a Valium or Prozac or whatever, I don't know, whatever the drug might be for, anxiety. And it just continues on and on.
It's
where
such
it could
a journey.
start as so simple as which I've done the heart practice. Yes. And it's wonderful. And we're going to do that in a different session. So
Absolutely.
I'm so excited that you're going to
fun.
come back. Yes. And so it's really, I'm just so thrilled to have had this conversation, because I feel like it ties in so much, and so many, of us, that, I feel so grateful for my job.
Oh, yeah.
I get to make people pretty. Like, how fabulous is that? I am very grateful for my CPA as well. Trust me. But if I had to do that job, that would be horrible for me. And to also be able to see, just kind of like, if I go to you, you just probably see, you're just unraveling my onion or whatever you're doing, and seeing like all this stuff that I'm probably like so embarrassed to even admit. And there's just no judgment there. And it's the same thing. Like I get women that, we look at ourselves in the mirror, and we see the past, 40 years of versus being 20, and now you're 50 or 60 years old. And, there's beauty throughout every single, process. And I think that's the fun part that we get to honor. And I also think that, I think women are actually, they're most beautiful, like in their mid to late 30s, because, you've kind of lost that cute little baby fat, and there's a lot that shines through if you are a happy and well person. That is just not something that can pop out of an eyeshadow. We can enhance it and show you that, but I think it really is something that just kind of blossoms. And it's so fun. And I think even in your 50s, like, that's a whole other area that is, you develop this whole other side, because now you're kind of like, okay, it's kind of weird actually to think like, wow, I'm like halfway through. It's a little bizarre. But actually, I was talking to somebody yesterday at the Kundalini Yoga Center, and I said, well, how old are you? And he goes, it's how young I am.
I love that.
And I was like, that is exactly it. And he said, because he spoke Spanish also, and in Spanish you say, ¿cuántos años tienes? How many years do you have?
Wow.
And that, it's like, so I have X amount of years, because I've owned those years, versus how old are you? Very different, and just from one language to the next, huh? So how young are you, right? I like that better.
I love that. And two, it's like so much about, I think, people's eyes, and like, how connected they are. And I find too, it's like the more comfortable people are in their skin, it's like they want to be there. Everyone wants to feel like themselves, but how,
Mm-hmm.
And I think the key with that, like at the end of the day, like we just talked about a lot of things that you could potentially look at, explore, and do. And that could feel overwhelming. And in my practice, we always go over all of this in the first 2 sessions, but that I'm like, place this aside. Like, let's just begin, because that's how we're going to get there. And it may just be one thing that clears up so much. But what I always find is like, there's this like coherence and this connection and this beauty that comes forth because they're beginning to see themselves this way. They're beginning to see like their world differently, in a different way where they can really appreciate it. And it's the same thing actually. Like I work with a lot of teams and organizations, and it's like the second someone realizes they want to be there, that like they don't just need to or have to be there, that like they get to be there, that they now appreciate the experience, like that value is just upped. And they're so connected to their life or to the organization or to themselves in such a different way, because they know that it's going to be more about embracing the depth that's going to bring the potential out versus like kind of like trying to scramble for it. It's going to be, there can be a different way, even though we can of course enjoy this and use that to our benefit too. It can just work both ways.
Yes, I think that's such a beautiful thing that you bring out, and I really think so much now with social media, so many people are trying to just portray this fake persona because that's what you have to do.
Yeah.
It's like taking, keeping up with the Joneses times a million. And that's a lot of pressure.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of pressure.
And to know that you're deceiving yourself.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm sure that's a very long conversation, but to give yourself that freedom to maybe like not walk down the street looking here and looking here.
Yeah.
That's just that little shift can bring so much for us to look at each other's eyes.
Totally.
Same thing yesterday. I went to yoga. I turned around and this guy was just, he said, well, I'm so sorry if my foot was in your face. And I go, you know what? I'm sure I've had several feet in my face before. So no offense. And we just, and it was all eye contact. And he was talking about, he said, I knew I was going to meet somebody and talk to somebody. And he said, I am so into synchronicity.
Yeah.
That was really like his thing for the year.
That's so cool.
And that's what you're talking about, when you can, and I feel like so much of that takes place when we sleep too, to kind of clear all of that and allow what we need to learn a lot of times and that healing and all of that. So this has been amazing. I could talk to you for 4 hours.
It's so easy to. It really would be
so long. I'm fascinated with all of this. You're just like a wealth of information. So how can people contact you? And of course, I'll post all of this on there, but yes.
So we have a website. It's www.drbrookestuart.com. So DRBROOKESTUART.com. And then we have a pretty interesting Instagram presence. Like we try to provide a lot of value there. So that's just at Dr. Brooke Stuart.
Okay.
And this would be the two main ways. And of course, I have email and all of that through the website. But those would probably be the most valuable sources of information. And we try to provide a lot of free articles, tools, talks, workshops, little tidbits of information. To me, it's absolutely all about like, how can we make growth approachable and direct, and how can we just bring that growth and a health experience to people where it's a felt experience. It's not just like information out there, because there's so many mixed messages, but it's like, how can we utilize that and experience it and use it for actualization, you know? So
wow. Well, she's a beacon of light, as you can tell. You just want her to be your friend. And it's been thrilling to meet you and just the conversation that we've had. And I hope it's been of value to, those of you. You might know somebody that you're like, wow. So forward this to them, and maybe they can hear and then start following you. You're like, hey, it's been, 10 years since I've done anything with my look, and come play with us. Come to Studio Cara. You can check us out. It's so fun. We actually kind of know what we're doing.
I love it. Like, it's such good energy too. Like, I can tell, like, you love what you do. I love it. And you love people. And like, and I think that just, there's something so authentic about that you can't, that's unsaid. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It really is something that you have to love doing. Yep. And, we're different also in the way that you come in for a makeup lesson, you bring your stuff with you.
That's so cool.
Yeah, because you probably have stuff. You may not have stuff. We've got plenty of stuff, but you bring your stuff with you, and we look through what you have.
Yeah,
it's kind of like, for you, people bring their U-Haul that's lodged inside with all the crap, and you start pulling it out and looking at it and going, this doesn't serve you. What lipstick is this? We kind of do the same thing.
That's amazing. Well, it is true. I mean, I probably refer more people to my hairdresser than anyone else on the planet, because you sit there and she is a therapist. Like this, like Jennifer is, oh my gosh, like literally, like, I mean, but I'm sure you are a therapist. Like people sit there, I tell you everything, and it's like it's landing, and they're learning a new skill set that brings out that radiance. So it's just like we're all in the service industry.
Well, it is, and my business is intimate too. Whether we're doing a facial or we're doing makeup sometimes, and it is intimate because it goes deep, and especially or even let's say, like, I work with a lot of professionals that we help them kind of brand their look.
I love
so
that.
The more that we'll have to talk about this for
Brooke
with all our speech engagements, right? Like that is something, my background from film and TV, that it's so important because that evokes trust. Or some people are like, oh well, I'm kind of blonde one day and then I'm maybe a little darker and I'm this. Well, that sends mixed messages to people because they get confused, especially if you are your own brand, or if you're a particular if now with social media and all of that, unless you're a hairstylist, that is somebody kind of creative, but if not, you really want people to hear you versus being all confused with all these different things going on that we don't even realize. So that's kind of fun, even though I'm here like with glasses on sometimes and sometimes not, but that just kind of happens.
Exactly. I wear glasses too.
So this has been amazing.
Awesome.
Thank you
for having me
so much. Yes, it's just been like a blessing. I hope you've enjoyed it. Dr. Brooke Stuart, Leslie Kristen, and we will keep you tuned on being able to share with them what is it called?
Yes, the heart-based practice.
Heart-based practice.
That's going to be cool.
Yes.
Yeah, let's do that.
That's very fun. So thank you so much for watching, and this has been a pleasure. Wishing you a fabulous week, and we'll see you on the next Pro Industry. Bye.
Bye, guys.